Hey everyone, how's it going? Juan Dhas here, and welcome back to this week's YouTube lesson. Sorry for the delay, it's just been a little rough with a few gigs happening here and there and just some stuff happening in the building, but glad to finally be getting this done for you. And today we're going to be working on the breakdown for the new etude that I put up. If you haven't checked it out yet, go check it out here, or well, you would have listened to it in the intro, but you can check it out on my website and pick up a copy there. It's $7. And with it comes the standard notation, the tab for anyone who wants to see my fingerings or isn't much of a reader, and a 2,000-word summary that effectively just kind of outlines pitfalls or things that can happen in practice, things to keep in mind when performing or working on this piece. Now, I also want to make a special announcement and say that I am doing a giveaway for anyone who uploads a video recording themselves playing this piece, or a part of it. I'm giving away free half-hour lessons. So if anyone wants to get in on that opportunity, fire away, record a video. I'd love to see what you guys have to do and wanted to open up something for the community. So without further ado, let's get into it. And one of the things I want to touch on is, why do I like doing etudes, or why do I prefer doing them? Well, one, I feel like I finally had something to say again after the last etude book I did a few years ago. But I prefer to use etudes as opposed to kind of one-off licks because they teach the concept on a musical level. And I find you learn about music through music. You don't learn about music through a cell, essentially. So one of the things that ends up happening is that you get a more musical understanding of the idea, and you also work on multiple facets of your musicality, such as your interpretation, how you work on dynamics, how you work on flow, if it's free time, your rhythm, things like that. So I prefer to do this, and you know, at the end of the day, you don't just have a lick that you use, you have a piece of music that you can perform. I write these pieces in mind with the fact that you can perform this if you want to. It's not just a piece that is a study piece. For example, think of the Chopin etudes. They work on very much the same token, and they're revered for not only their technicality, but also their musicality. And I can think of the Revolutionary Etude, the Ocean Etude, the Black Keys Etude. You know, there are so many. Winter Wind, I think, is another one. Was it Winter Wind? I can't remember, but, you know, go check out the Chopin Etudes. They're absolutely wonderful. So what I wanted to do this breakdown for was also to get into some ideas of, or some things that present themselves in the etude that maybe aren't so easy to explain over text and, you know, translate better over video. And I want to first just spend a little bit of time on the opening line, because it kind of contains almost everything in the etude in just a few measures. So the whole line, let me just get my volume up here. So the whole line should be something like this. Right? And then we're right into the A section, ready to jump off. So the idea in and of itself, one thing I pose, and one thing that's written into the score, is double piano or pianissimo, and then there's a wide crescendo going all the way to forte. And dynamics are such a crucial thing that I think are overlooked, And especially when it comes to performing live, it's very easy for people, and at times even an entire band, to just dynamically flatline. Or maybe at most, if there's a development, it's maybe very subtle, with the exception of maybe ballads, although I have seen even ballads dynamically flatline. And that makes for a tough performance, both for the performer and for the listener. It's very easy to get bored. If you have peaks and valleys in your dynamic level, it's much easier to engage and retain interest, and it's a very good skill to develop. So what you'll notice is I'll take the idea, and bear in mind, like, I usually have my volume kind of around 7 or 8-ish just for this apartment, so that it's not too boomy, but really quiet, extremely quiet. Right? And you can interpret it as you need to with the rubato tempo. You can take it as slow or speed up and slow down where you need to. That's why I've written it that way, so you're not worrying about whether you're technically proficient yet. It's just about getting the idea and the concept under your fingers. So you take the idea, and one thing I suggest if you're having a hard time is to do a ladder exercise. I got this from Daniele Camarda, with whom I was working with when I spent some time in Dubai, and it really helped open up some new doors for me, and I'm forever grateful for that experience. So one thing I like to do is take quarter notes and just on one note, but go through your dynamic extremes. So for example, triple piano and triple forte. So if I just get my volume going, and then really, I'm just going to do this with 1 bar of quarter notes. I suggest 2 to test yourself further. So and then really quiet again. And you want to be able to have all of the quarter notes at the same dynamic, and also to have the switch be immediate. Start with 2 dynamic levels and start with your total range so that you know where to go and that you know what your outer limit is. Then divide it further. Then you can do 4, 6, 8 dynamic levels. Nice. So that when doing that exercise, it gives you more control. However, bear in mind, the guitar is a weird instrument, especially the electric guitar, for dynamics, because you're kind of beholden to the amplifier. What is triple forte at this dynamic level isn't a true triple forte, right? A true triple forte from an acoustic instrument is deafening. It's extremely loud and it really projects. Here we're kind of slaves to the amp. So everything has to be relative to where your volume is set. And that means, you know, being very conscious of this on a gig. What is a triple forte on a gig? What is a triple piano? And everything has to be done with relativity. So keep that in mind when working on the electric. So moving on, I want to dive into the piece head on and dive in head first because there's a lot to work through. So the idea of the concept was to take a wide interval idea, but without patterns, without having it feel like a permutation exercise, just have it being really musical and seeing how you can open up your dynamic range and your melodic ideas to create interest over the course of a whole piece. So if we look, and a lot of these are based around chord shapes, you'll find spread triads interwoven, maybe some other voicings, you know, some other sounds. So starting off, right? Really let the melody speak and really let the melodic nature of the phrase push where you need to go. Also remember these little grace notes and trills and ornaments and things like that. They're just there to add brightness to your phrasing. And I'm not talking brightness in terms of the tone knob or cranking your treble. I'm talking of brightness in terms of levity and adding a little bit of spring to your phrasing, which is a wonderful thing. Just don't overuse it. I have a whole video talking about articulation that you might want to check out if you want to dive into probably the intricacies of articulation and performing with it. And one of those is not over-articulating. So moving forward, where were we? Notice how I'm moving between dynamic levels. and outlining what is a supporting line and what is the main melody. That's another passage where I would zone my dynamics, so extremely quiet getting to forte, right? Where was I? I want to talk about that stretch. You don't have to stretch. Do not overexert your hands. Most of the ideas fit within a 4 to 5 fret range. You can refinger them if necessary. You can find different ways, alternate fingerings, or you can try not hanging out on certain notes for too long so that you're not overexerting yourself, right? That's the whole idea. For example, this B flat to E flat can be played up here. It could be played like that. It'll give you a very different sound, but you won't hurt your hands and you'll still understand the fundamental idea of the concept. And who knows, maybe that lays better for your hands. The fingerings that I've included in the tab that are my personal fingerings are just how I would personally finger it, the passage. Don't feel the need to stick to something I do. Come up with your own way of doing it. So, moving on. So see, I've got like little chords. That's actually this voicing. And that's little major 7 voicing. Leading to another major 7 voicing, right? Coming to some harmonic minor stuff. You know, really pay attention to that. Now this passage can potentially be a trouble spot. What I want to tell students and people trying this is have patience. You don't have to run through the entire thing. Take your time, breathe through the phrase. Right? If the double stops are too much to handle or you feel like your hands are kind of overly reaching, just take the top note. It'll still get the idea and you'll understand the point of the etude. Bear in mind dynamics. Sorry. It's easier to tackle it on the single note stuff as opposed to the chordal stuff, right? An implied C major to kind of B over D sharp. And moving into this little tremolo passage. It's a nice little device. It's a nice little tension building spot. There's a specific right hand fingering I'm using. I'm using pick, middle, ring, middle on the lowest notes. So, right? You might want to spend some time working on that phrase just to make sure it really translates and that it feels fluid. It might feel awkward at first, especially those kind of intricate hybrid picking patterns, but they're my assimilations or emulations of a proper classical tremolo. I'm not a classical player, I just try to get close to a few sounds. Also note the dynamics. I've kind of flipped the expectation on its head. Usually it's very common to see something like from soft to loud. I've done the opposite. I've gone from loud to soft. To trigger the movement into the actual D section, the closing section. Right? Now the D section represents like a new modulation. We've changed keys. Pay attention to how I change keys. That might be... And observe the harmony. Make note of any movements you like. Who knows, maybe that would be great for your compositions and your ideas. But, so moving forward, you see I've got kind of a low E flat sound happening. But instead of playing like a G over here, I've kind of displaced the octave. Opened up the voicing a little more. And a dyad that implies kind of an F major sound. Right? So... And notice the mezzo piano interpretation of compared to the forte. That's a great example of kind of where the potential for this concept can go. It doesn't just have to be for isolated phrases. You can take this and extend this across the entire range of your instrument. And you've seen I've gone all the way from a high B flat, a pretty high B flat for the instrument, down to a low F sharp in one phrase. So this helps for whenever you feel like you're running out of range on your instrument. It's a nice little way of showing, oh, I still have more that I can do, and I still have more left in the tank, so to speak. So just to recap, nice spread voicing. Well, it's kind of based on a drop 2 and 4, but I've added the 11. So, and I'm alternating between wide and close phrases. So wide open intervals, and then maybe a closed melody, so that you get this juxtaposition effect and it doesn't overdo the sound of wide intervals. I find that, you know, with anything, if you overdo it too much, no matter how interesting the concept, it will become stale and trite if you over repeat it too much. So, nice little... In the score, I've just got it to C to B flat, so you can do... Articulate it however you would like. But the important thing is musicality first, whatever feels musically appropriate for you. I like that because it feels thematically relevant to some stuff I'd done earlier in the piece. But... where was it? Implied F triad. Now with this phrase, you don't have to run and steamroll through the whole thing. You can take it at your pleasure. Pull and push the tempo as you see fit. That's why I've written it rubato. If you want the extra challenge though, this can be a nice indicator of where you can take the idea for your runs and lines. But you see, right up to G, kind of G minor, then an implied D over F sharp. Right? Then what came after that? Right? Implied F over A, or F7 over A, right? Resolving nicely to kind of like an E flat 6. And check this motion out. You're doing... Right, so I'm doing E flat 6, F over E flat, but instead of going here where I would normally go, I went to C minor over G, so. And I love using these voicings and guitar voicings or drop voicings especially, because you've got all of these fifths and seconds and fourths and sixths and all of these wide intervals already baked into the voicing. So it's very useful for the wide interval stuff. It's just tying them together melodically, right? Ending on this poly chord. So we've got E minor over F sharp, or kind of like an implied B actually. So like E minor over B, I can't remember what I put in the score. And we go to a D. This one's a fun voicing, right? And this is where the harmonics come into play. I want to touch on this real quick before we close out the video. So, sus4 flat 9. And these are variations of octave harmonics, but some of them aren't true octaves. Some of them are the last two are 2-octave harmonics. It helps to give a tighter melody as opposed to harmonics that just jump about. But, right, that's an octave. So, octave from here, E flat, right? Then 2 octaves above the open G string, right? And then roughly where your 28th fret would be, for me it tends to be right on the middle line of the humbucker here on the 24th fret guitar, right? Of that high F sharp. It'll take some practice to hit that reliably, but once you do, you can start hitting that in a phrase, and you'll get this nice rub. Right? Really subtle. Let that ring out for a little, and then we have the closing phrase, which is just a variation on a messiaen idea. And an octave harmonic at the end. The messiaen idea is just moving everything in major thirds, but what I'm doing is voice leading. All minor triads, so G minor to B minor, B minor to E flat minor, E flat minor to G minor. Bear in mind the second inversion, so root, second inversion, root, second inversion, root, second inversion, hit the 9, and then hit that last harmonic at the end. So that's kind of a breakdown of the whole piece, and remember, this is an accompaniment to what's already in the package. There's a lot of information. I've really crammed it in. For one etude, there's already about 15 pages of stuff in there, so I hope you really get a lot out of this. Please, I'd love to see some people tackle this. It really is a piece of music that I want people to treat as a piece of music, not as an exercise. All in all, have fun. I hope you had a wonderful time just working through this and just seeing a little bit of my process for how I think about things. And I hope it finds you in... Where was I going with this? I hope it just really triggers some new ideas for you and really finds you looking somewhere beyond maybe where you're currently at, and maybe inspires you in your own playing, writing, or improvisation. Until next time, take care, and I will see you in the next video.